The sky burned orange above New Geneva as Sarah Chen ran through the crumbling streets, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Behind her, the last remnants of humanity's greatest city collapsed under the weight of the Void Swarm's relentless assault. The mechanical screech of their bioships filled the air, a sound that had haunted her dreams for 3 months now. Sarah clutched the datapad against her chest, its blue glow the only light cutting through the ash-filled darkness. The evacuation sirens had stopped hours ago. Everyone who could leave had already gone, everyone except her. She wasn't running toward the escape pods like the others. She was running toward something far more dangerous. The Dragon King's ship hung in the atmosphere above the city like a dark moon, its obsidian hull reflecting the fires below. For 2 years, the Draconic Empire had watched humanity's war against the Void Swarm with cold indifference. They could have ended the conflict in days, but dragons didn't involve themselves in the affairs of lesser species. Sarah's boots splashed through puddles of acid rain as she reached the old communications tower. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel, bypassing security systems she had helped design back when the world made sense. Back when her husband Marcus was alive. Back when her daughter Emma laughed in their garden instead of lying cold in the military cemetery. The tower's massive dish turned skyward, locking onto the Dragon King's ship. Sarah's hands trembled as she activated the emergency diplomatic channel, a frequency reserved for only the most critical interspecies communications. Static filled the air for several seconds before a voice like rumbling thunder responded. The translator couldn't quite capture the alien harmonics, but the meaning came through clearly. "This is the Sovereign of Eternal Flame, Keeper of Ancient Laws, Lord Virkeshahai. Who dares disturb my contemplation with such crude technology?" Sarah swallowed hard. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was real, the words felt like ash in her mouth. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, former Director of Xenological Studies at the Global Defense Initiative. I request an audience, Your Magnificence. I need to speak with you in person." The pause stretched so long that Sarah wondered if the connection had been severed. Around her, the building shook as another section of the city collapsed. The Void Swarm was methodical in their destruction, turning everything they touched into gray dust that fed their ever-growing fleet. "Amusing," the Dragon King finally replied. "A human wishes to speak with me as her species faces extinction. Tell me, Dr. Chen, what could you possibly offer that would interest one such as myself?" Sarah looked down at the datapad in her hands. 3 years of research, the culmination of humanity's greatest scientific minds working in secret. Information that could change the balance of power in the galaxy if anyone was brave enough to use it. I offer myself as your bonded mate, in exchange for your intervention against the Void Swarm. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat over the distant sounds of destruction. She had just proposed marriage to the most powerful being in known space, a creature that could incinerate her with a thought. "You jest." "I do not. I know the old ways, Your Magnificence. I've studied your culture for 15 years. A bonded mate holds equal status to the Dragon King himself. My voice would carry weight in your court. And in return—" She paused, watching another transport ship flee into the darkness. "In return, you save what remains of my people. And why would I desire a human mate? Your species lives for mere decades. You are fragile, emotional creatures driven by sentiment rather than logic." Sarah felt anger flare in her chest, but she pushed it down. This was bigger than her pride. "Because I can offer you something no dragon can. Something your people lost thousands of years ago when you chose power over curiosity. Speak plainly, human. I can offer you wonder." Another long pause. When the Dragon King spoke again, His voice carried a note of something Sarah couldn't quite identify. Curiosity, perhaps. Explain. Sarah looked up at the massive ship above her. Your people have lived for millennia. You've seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Nothing surprises you anymore. Nothing excites you. That's why you sit in your ships, watching the galaxy burn, because you've forgotten what it means to care about anything. And you believe you can change this? I believe humans are the youngest species to achieve interstellar travel. We see the universe differently than you do. We find beauty in chaos, hope in darkness. We love fiercely and grieve deeply. We dream of impossible things and then make them real. Sarah's voice grew stronger as she spoke. I've spent my life studying your people, Lord Virkashahai. I know you were once explorers, philosophers, artists, before you became conquerors. The building shook again, more violently this time. Chunks of concrete rained down around the communications tower. The void swarm was getting closer. Your words are unexpected, the Dragon King said slowly. But words are easily spoken. Why should I believe that you truly offer yourself willingly? Perhaps you seek only to save your people through deception. Sarah closed her eyes. She thought of Marcus, of Emma, of all the friends and colleagues she had lost in this war. Then she thought of the data pad in her hands and the choice she was about to make. Because I'm going to prove it to you right now. Her fingers moved across the data pad's surface, accessing files that humanity had died to protect. Coordinates, fleet positions, weapon specifications, the location of humanity's last stronghold at Kepler Station, where 2 million refugees waited for a miracle that would never come. I'm transmitting the complete tactical database of human military operations, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was doing. Fleet movements, weapon capabilities, defensive positions, everything. If you wanted to, you could use this information to finish what the Void Swarm started. You could wipe out humanity in a matter of hours. You would betray your own species? I would trust you with their lives. There's a difference. Sarah watched the transmission complete, knowing she had just committed the greatest act of treason in human history, or the greatest act of faith. The old stories say that dragons value honesty above all else, that you can sense deception like a scent in the air. Can you sense deception in me, Lord Virkashahai? The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Around Sarah, the city continued to burn. The Void Swarm's bioships moved through the smoke like predators, harvesting the last resources from humanity's former capital. When the Dragon King spoke again, his voice had changed. The contempt was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. No deception, only desperate courage and a love for your people that burns brighter than plasma fire. A pause. You would truly bond yourself to me? Accept the physiological changes required to survive as my mate? Leave behind everything human to become something new? Sarah thought of the research she had done on dragon bonding. The process was irreversible, fundamentally altering a being's genetic structure to match their dragon mate. She would gain their longevity, their resilience, their power, but she would also lose her humanity in ways that couldn't be measured in a laboratory. Yes, even knowing that your people might see you as a traitor, that they might curse your name for consorting with those who stood by while they suffered? Even knowing that. The Dragon King made a sound that the translator interpreted as thoughtful humming. Most curious. You offer yourself as a sacrifice for your people, yet you also claim to offer me wonder. How do you reconcile this contradiction? Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. Because sacrifice and wonder aren't contradictory, Your Magnificence. They're the same thing. Every time a human chooses to put something greater than themselves first, we create a small miracle. Every time we love someone enough to risk everything for them, we prove that the universe is more than just physics and chemistry. We prove that meaning exists. Meaning, the Dragon King repeated slowly, as if testing an unfamiliar word. Meaning, Sarah confirmed. The thing your people lost when they became too powerful to need anything from anyone else. The thing that makes existence more than just the passage of time. A new sound filled the air, different from the void swarm's mechanical screech. It was deeper, more primal, like the roar of a solar wind. Sarah looked up to see the Dragon King's ship descending through the burning clouds, its hull glowing with contained energy that made the air itself shimmer. Dr. Sarah Chen. The Dragon King's voice now came from speakers mounted on the ship itself, strong enough to be heard over the destruction. You have presented me with a proposal that is either the height of courage or the depths of madness. Perhaps both. I find myself intrigued. The ship settled onto the ruined plaza in front of the communications tower, its landing creating a crater in the broken concrete. A section of the hull irised open, revealing an airlock that glowed with soft blue light. If you truly wish to bond with me, the Dragon King continued, if you truly believe you can show me this wonder you speak of, then come aboard. But understand this. Human, once you step through that airlock, there is no return to what you were. You will be changed in ways your species cannot imagine. Sarah looked at the airlock, then at the burning city around her. In the distance, she could see the last human transport ships disappearing into the void, carrying the survivors to what might be their final refuge. Her people were dying, and she was their only hope. She began walking toward the ship. There's something else you should know, she called out as she approached the airlock. Something I didn't mention before. Speak. Sarah paused at the threshold between her old life and whatever came next. I'm not just any human, Lord Virkashahai. I'm the daughter of Admiral Chen Wei, the architect of humanity's defense strategy. I'm the widow of Colonel Marcus Thompson, who died buying time for the evacuation of New Singapore. I'm the mother of Lieutenant Emma Chen Thompson, who sacrificed herself to destroy a Void Swarm command ship. She stepped into the airlock, feeling the alien atmosphere wash over her skin like warm honey. I'm not offering you a random human as your mate, she continued as the outer door sealed behind her. I'm offering you the living embodiment of everything humanity has fought and died for in this war. I'm offering you our courage, our love, our refusal to surrender, even when all hope is lost. The inner door opened, revealing a corridor that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along the walls in rhythm with some vast heartbeat. At the far end stood a figure that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. The Dragon King was not what she had expected. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, but his form was more humanoid than she had imagined. His skin was the deep blue-black of space between stars, crossed with silver lines that pulsed with inner fire. His eyes were like miniature suns, golden and ancient, and utterly alien. When he moved, it was with a grace that suggested incredible power held in perfect control. But it was his face that surprised her most. She had expected arrogance, contempt, the cold calculation of a being that saw other species as insects. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like loneliness. Welcome aboard the Eternal Flame, Dr. Chen, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that she could feel in her bones. I am Virkashahai, sovereign of the Third Dynasty, guardian of the ancient ways. He paused, studying her with those sun-bright eyes. And I find myself facing a decision that will either damn me as a fool or mark me as the first of my kind in 10,000 years to choose hope over certainty. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. Then we're already something remarkable, Your Magnificence, because I made that same choice the moment I called your ship. Behind them, through the crystal walls, the burning city of New Geneva continued its slow collapse into dust. But for the first time in months, Sarah Chen felt something she had thought was lost forever. She felt hope. The Dragon King's private chambers defied every expectation Sarah had formed about alien architecture. Instead of cold metal or harsh angles, the space felt organic, alive. The walls curved like the inside of a shell, their surface a deep amber that seemed to hold trapped sunlight. Streams of what looked like liquid starfire flowed through channels carved into the floor, providing both light and warmth. HFY stood before a massive viewing portal, watching the destruction of New Geneva below. His massive frame was silhouetted against the burning city, hands clasped behind his back in a posture that somehow conveyed both power and melancholy. "Sit," he said without turning around, gesturing to a cluster of crystalline formations that shaped themselves into chair-like forms as Sarah approached. "We have much to discuss before you truly understand what you are asking of me." Sarah lowered herself onto one of the crystal seats, surprised by how comfortable it was. The material seemed to adjust to her body temperature and posture, supporting her in ways that defied physics as she understood it. "The bonding process," HFY began, finally turning to face her, "is not merely ceremonial among my people. It is a fundamental alteration of one's very essence. Your DNA will be rewritten at the quantum level. Your lifespan will extend to match mine, approximately 40,000 of your years. Your physical capabilities will increase dramatically. But more than that," he paused, those golden eyes studying her face, "your mind will be linked to mine, forever. Every thought, every memory, every emotion will be shared between us. There will be no secrets, no privacy, no part of yourself that remains solely your own." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her expression steady. "And in return? In return, you would become my equal in all things. My voice would be yours to command. My power would be at your disposal. The resources of the Draconic Empire would bend to your will as readily as they bend to mine." HFY moved closer, his footsteps silent on the crystal floor. "But tell me, Dr. Chen, do you truly understand what 40,000 years means? You speak of wonder and meaning, but how long before the weight of eternity crushes such concepts? How long before you come to envy your people their brief, passionate lives?" Sarah thought of her daughter, Emma, who had lived only 26 years but had packed more courage and love into that short time than most beings experienced in centuries. "I think," she said slowly, "that the length of a life matters less than what you choose to do with it. Emma died at 26, but in those years she became a pilot, a leader, a hero who saved thousands of lives. She experienced more wonder in a single sunset than many beings might find in millennia, because she chose to see each moment as precious. Your daughter," HFY's voice carried a note of something that might have been sympathy. "Tell me about her." Sarah's throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak. "Emma was everything good about humanity. Curious, brave, impossibly optimistic. When she was 12, she spent 3 months teaching herself draconic language patterns just so she could understand your poetry. She said the way your people described starlight was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard." The Dragon King's eyes widened slightly. "She learned our language? For poetry?" "She learned 17 languages," Sarah continued. "The memories flowing now like water through a broken dam. Not for school, not for her career, but because she wanted to understand how different species saw the universe. She collected perspectives the way other children collect toys. When the war started, she could have stayed safe on Earth, worked in communications or intelligence. Instead, she volunteered for the front lines because she said someone needed to speak for humanity to the species we met out there." HFY was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "How did she die?" The Battle of Kepler Station. Her fighter squadron was covering the evacuation of a civilian transport. The Void Swarm sent 3 dreadnoughts, massive bioships that could have destroyed the transport in seconds. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Emma and 7 other pilots held them off for 43 minutes, long enough for 18,000 civilians to escape. They called it the miracle of Kepler, but it wasn't a miracle. It was just a young woman who loved strangers enough to die for them. The Dragon King walked to another section of the chamber where streams of that liquid starfire converged into a pool. He touched the surface with one clawed finger, and images began to appear in the glowing liquid like a 3-dimensional recording. "The Void Swarm," he said, and Sarah saw the familiar nightmare shapes in the pool. Biomechanical ships that looked like massive insects, their hulls covered with what appeared to be chitinous armor, but was actually a living material that fed on stellar radiation. They appeared in our galaxy approximately 1,000 years ago. They consume entire solar systems, converting all matter into more ships, more warriors. Every species they encounter either joins them or becomes fuel for their expansion. The images changed, showing a star system Sarah didn't recognize, planets stripped bare, their cores exposed and glowing, ships the size of moons drifting through empty space. "This was the Kalaran hegemony," HFY continued, "a proud warrior race that had stood for 10,000 years. They fell to the swarm in less than a decade. The Kalarans requested our aid, offered us tribute, wealth, technology. We refused." "Why?" The question escaped Sarah's lips before she could stop it. HFY's expression darkened. "Because we had made a choice long ago to remain apart from the struggles of younger species. We told ourselves it was wisdom, that intervention would only delay the inevitable. The strong survive, the weak perish. It is the way of the universe." He waved his hand, and the images in the pool changed again. This time, Sarah saw dragons, but they were different from HFY. Younger looking, their scales bright with color instead of the deep cosmic hues of their king. They were building things, creating art, exploring strange worlds with expressions of joy and wonder. "My people were not always as we are now," HFY said quietly. "Once we were explorers, teachers, gardeners of civilizations. We helped young species reach for the stars. We shared knowledge freely, celebrated diversity, found beauty in the different ways life could flourish." What changed? The War of Convergence. 70,000 years ago, several of the species we had helped decided that they knew better than their teachers. They formed an alliance, declared that dragons were a threat to galactic peace, that our power made other races dependent and weak. They attacked our homeworlds with weapons we had taught them to build. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. "You won." "We destroyed them utterly. Entire species rendered extinct in a matter of years. Civilizations that had produced art, music, philosophy, science, reduced to scattered atoms." HFY's voice carried the weight of eons. "And when it was over, we swore never again to care so deeply that betrayal could wound us so profoundly. We withdrew from the galaxy, became observers instead of participants. We told ourselves this was wisdom." The images in the pool showed the aftermath. Dragon ships retreating to distant systems, ancient allies left to fend for themselves, the slow decay of the great interstellar communities that had once flourished under dragon guidance. "But it was not wisdom," HFY continued. "It was fear. We chose isolation over connection, safety over growth, certainty over wonder. And in doing so, we became something we never intended to be. Powerful enough to help everyone, but too afraid to help anyone." Sarah stood up from her crystal chair, moving closer to the pool of starfire. The images dancing in its depths showed her own species now, humanity's brief but brilliant expansion into space. Ships that were crude compared to dragon technology but beautiful in their imperfection, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations. "The Void Swarm came to your territory 2 years ago," she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, they consumed the Rigel system first, then Vega, then Altair. Each time, they sent us the same message: join us or be consumed. Each time, we refused. Our fleets could hold them back indefinitely, but we could not defeat them entirely, and so we watched as they turned their attention to younger, weaker species. Including us. Including you. HFY's golden eyes met hers. Your species fought them with a ferocity that surprised even us. Ships held together with determination and spite, tactics that should have been impossible, victories that defied every strategic calculation. We began to watch your war not out of idle curiosity, but out of genuine amazement. Sarah thought of the desperate battles she had witnessed, the impossible odds humanity had faced again and again. We had no choice. When you're facing extinction, you fight with everything you have, even when it's not enough. But it was never really about survival, was it? HFY moved to stand beside her, his presence like standing next to a contained star. Your species could have surrendered, could have joined the swarm, as others have, could have fled to distant galaxies. But you chose to fight, not because you believed you could win, but because you believed the fight itself mattered. Every life matters. Every world, every star, every possibility for the future. If we don't fight for them, who will? Sarah touched the surface of the starfire pool, and the images responded to her touch, showing memories from her own life. Her wedding to Marcus, Emma's first steps, the day humanity first reached another star. That's what you've forgotten, isn't it? It's not about winning or losing. It's about choosing to care even when caring hurts. HFY was quiet for a long time, watching the memories play out in the pool. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 63 million dragons died in the War of Convergence. I was there. I led the fleets that burned their worlds. I watched civilizations that we had loved and nurtured turn their backs on us and choose destruction over gratitude. He closed his eyes. For 70,000 years I have carried that pain, told myself that distance was the only protection against such loss. But watching your people fight, watching them choose love over safety again and again, I begin to wonder if we chose the wrong lesson from our tragedy. Sarah saw something in his expression that she recognized, the same look Marcus had worn after Emma's death. The terrible weight of wondering if you could have done something different. You couldn't save them, she said gently. The species that betrayed you, the ones that died in the war. You couldn't save them from their own choices, just like I couldn't save Emma, couldn't save Marcus, couldn't save the billions who've already died in this war. But that doesn't mean caring was wrong. It means caring is the only thing that makes any of this matter. HFY opened his eyes, and for the first time since she had met him, Sarah saw something other than ancient weariness in that golden gaze. She saw possibility. If I were to intervene, he said slowly, if I were to commit the fleets of the Draconic Empire to this war, it would not be without cost. The swarm's technology has evolved since their last encounter with us. Many dragons would die, perhaps many humans as well, caught in battles they are not equipped to survive. People are dying right now while we talk, Sarah pointed out. At least this way, they die fighting for something instead of just being consumed. And you would accept responsibility for those deaths? As my bonded mate, their blood would be on your hands as much as mine. Sarah thought of all the decisions she had made in her life, all the roads taken and not taken. The choice to become a xenologist instead of a doctor like her parents wanted. The choice to marry Marcus despite their family's objections. The choice to have Emma even knowing the dangerous world she would grow up in. The choice to let Emma join the military instead of keeping her safe at home. Every choice carried a price. Every path meant abandoning other possibilities. But that was what it meant to be alive, to matter, to make a difference in an indifferent universe. "Yes," she said simply. HFY studied her face for a long moment, then moved to a section of the chamber she hadn't noticed before. It appeared to be some kind of altar, carved from the same crystal material as the walls, but somehow more ancient, more significant. Symbols covered its surface, their meaning lost to time, but their power unmistakable. "The bonding ceremony is not complex," he said, placing his hands on the altar's surface. The symbols began to glow in response to his touch. "But it is irreversible. Once begun, it cannot be stopped. Are you certain this is your choice, Dr. Sarah Chen? Not for your people, not for your duty, but for yourself?" Sarah walked to the altar, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Below them, she could see the last lights of New Geneva finally flickering out. Soon, there would be nothing left but ash and memory. "I've spent my entire career studying other species," she said, placing her hands on the altar next to his, trying to understand how different forms of life could communicate, cooperate, find common ground despite their differences. This isn't just a political alliance or a military contract. This is the chance to prove that love can bridge any gap, that understanding can overcome any barrier, that two beings from completely different worlds can choose to become something new together. The altar's glow intensified, and Sarah felt something stirring in her cells, a warmth that seemed to come from the quantum level of her existence. "And if I disappoint you?" HFY asked. "If 40,000 years from now, you find that the dragon you bonded with is not worthy of the sacrifice you made?" Sarah smiled, thinking of Emma's favorite saying, the words she had lived by and died for. "Then I'll spend 40,000 years teaching you how to be worthy." The Dragon King's expression transformed, ancient features shifting into something that might have been wonder. "Your daughter was wise beyond her years." "She was human," Sarah replied. "We all are, foolish and brave and impossibly hopeful. It's our greatest weakness and our greatest strength." HFY lifted his hands from the altar, and the chamber filled with a sound like distant singing. "Then let us begin, Sarah Chen. Let us see if a dragon can remember what it means to hope, and if a human can teach an empire how to care." The bonding process began with light that seemed to come from everywhere at once, warm and golden and alive. Sarah felt her DNA beginning to rewrite itself, her cells adapting to changes that would let her survive at her mate's side for millennia to come. But more than that, she felt something else beginning to form between them. A connection deeper than thought, stronger than steel, older than the stars themselves. And in that moment, as two impossible beings chose to become something new together, the balance of the galaxy began to shift. 3 days after the bonding ceremony, Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Eternal Flame, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Dragon ships stretched across the void like a constellation of deadly stars, their crystalline hulls pulsing with contained energy. Each vessel was ancient beyond human comprehension, crewed by beings who had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations. But it was the smaller ships that drew Sarah's attention. Human vessels, battered and scarred from months of desperate fighting, now flew alongside their dragon escorts. The sight should have been impossible. 3 days ago, these two species had never worked together. Now they were preparing to face an enemy that had consumed half the galaxy. "You are troubled," HFY observed, his mental voice echoing in Sarah's transformed mind. The bonding had changed her in ways she was still discovering. Her body now hummed with draconic energy, her senses expanded beyond anything a baseline human could imagine. But more than that, she could feel her mate's thoughts and emotions as clearly as her own. "I'm thinking about Admiral Harrison," she replied, both aloud and through their bond. "He's not happy about taking orders from someone he calls a traitor." Through the tactical display, Sarah could see the human command ship Defiance holding position at the fleet's edge. Admiral Harrison had been Marcus's mentor, a man who had fought the Void Swarm since the war's beginning. When Sarah had appeared on his view screen 3 days ago, speaking for the Draconic Empire and wearing the ceremonial markings of a dragon mate, his reaction had been predictable. "You married one of them while our people were dying," Harrison had said, his weathered face tight with disgust. "While my son burned in the void at Proxima, you were playing politics with alien royalty." The words had stung, but Sarah understood his anger. From his perspective, she had betrayed everything human while their species faced extinction. He couldn't see what she had gained, only what she had given up. "Harrison lost his son at Proxima Centauri," Sarah told HFY now. 90,000 human ships destroyed in a single battle. He's been fighting a losing war for 2 years, watching his people die piece by piece. He doesn't trust anyone who hasn't shared that sacrifice. HFY's massive form turned from the tactical displays to study his mate. The transformation had changed Sarah's appearance dramatically. Her hair had taken on a silver sheen that moved like liquid metal. Her eyes now held flecks of gold that seemed to burn with inner fire, and her skin had a subtle luminescence that marked her as something more than baseline human. But it was her mind that had undergone the most profound changes. She could process information at draconic speeds, think in multiple dimensions, perceive the flow of space-time itself. Yet she was still undeniably human in ways that mattered most. "You could order him to obey," HFY pointed out. "Your authority in this fleet is absolute." "Authority isn't the same as respect," Sarah replied. "Harrison needs to choose to follow me, not be forced to. That's how humans work. We follow leaders who earn our trust, not just those who claim power over us." Through the bond, HFY felt his mate's certainty about this, along with memories of her father's military service, her husband's leadership style, her daughter's refusal to accept orders she didn't believe in. For 70,000 years, dragons had ruled through strength and ancient law. The idea of earning authority instead of simply claiming it was foreign to his experience. It was also fascinating. "The Void Swarm fleet has been detected," reported shipsinger Cathis, the Eternal Flame's sensor officer. Her voice carried harmonics that painted three-dimensional images in the minds of those who heard her. Distance: 12 light hours and closing. Estimated strength: 47,000 bioships, including 17 Dreadnought-class vessels. Sarah felt the collective intake of breath from the human crews, even across the vacuum of space. 47,000 ships. It was the largest swarm fleet ever assembled, carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. The combined human-dragon force numbered barely 3,000 vessels. "Remember," Sarah broadcast on all frequencies, her voice reaching every ship in the fleet simultaneously. "We don't need to destroy them all. We just need to reach their command nexus and sever the network that links their bioships. Cut off the head, and the body dies." It was a strategy that could only work with dragon support. Human ships lacked the firepower to penetrate swarm defenses on their own, while dragon vessels had the raw power but not the tactical flexibility to execute the precise strike needed. Together, they might succeed where either species would fail alone. The plan was Emma's. Sarah had found it in her daughter's personal files, a theoretical assault scenario that Emma had developed during her training at the Naval Academy. It was brilliant, audacious, and completely insane, everything that made it perfectly human. "Signal from Admiral Harrison," Cathis reported. Sarah nodded. "Put him through." Harrison's face appeared on the main viewer, his expression grim but determined. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of the Defiance, a utilitarian space that showed the wear of constant battle. The Admiral himself looked older than his 60 years. Gray hair and weathered features telling the story of a man who had carried too much responsibility for too long. "Mrs. Chen," he said formally. He refused to use her new title, refused to acknowledge what she had become. "My tactical officers have reviewed your battle plan. They're calling it suicide." "And what do you call it, Admiral?" Harrison was quiet for a moment, studying her through the viewer. Sarah wondered what he saw when he looked at her now. Did he still see the xenologist who had briefed his staff on alien psychology, or just another inhuman thing wearing a human face? "I call it something my son would have volunteered for in a heartbeat," he said finally, "which means it's either brilliant or insane. Probably both." Sarah felt a spark of hope. "Will you trust me, Admiral?" "One more time?" "I don't trust you," Harrison replied bluntly. "You made a deal with aliens while our world burned. You changed yourself into something that isn't human anymore. You're asking me to fly my ships into a meat grinder on the word of someone who abandoned her own species." Sarah's heart sank, but Harrison wasn't finished. "But I knew your daughter," he continued, his voice softer now. "Emma Thompson was the finest pilot I ever served with and the bravest human I ever met. If there's any of her left in you, any of that impossible courage that made her who she was, then maybe this insane plan of yours might actually work." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "So I'm not following you because you married a Dragon King. I'm following you because you're Emma Thompson's mother, and if she believed in something, maybe I can too." Sarah felt tears she didn't know she could still shed. "Thank you, Admiral." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we survive this." Harrison's expression hardened. "All ships, this is Admiral Harrison. We have new orders from our xenological specialist. I know what you're thinking, and you're right. This plan is absolutely insane. It violates every principle of safe tactical doctrine and has virtually no chance of success." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "But it's also the kind of plan that wins wars. The kind of plan that reminds the galaxy why humans don't surrender. Why we keep fighting even when the math says we should give up. Today we're going to show the Void Swarm that they picked a fight with the wrong species." Across the fleet, human crews responded with cheers, whoops, and the kind of reckless enthusiasm that had carried their species from cave paintings to interstellar travel in the blink of cosmic time. Through the bond, Sarah felt Virka Shahai's amazement at the humans' reaction. Dragons would have analyzed the tactical parameters, calculated survival probabilities, maybe composed death songs in preparation for honorable defeat. But humans simply decided that impossible odds meant it was time to try harder. "Your people are remarkable," he said, both aloud and through their mental connection. "They're your people now, too," Sarah reminded him. "That's what bonding means. Their victories are yours, their losses are yours, their future is yours to protect. And their insanity is mine to share, apparently." But Virka Shahai's tone carried affection rather than criticism. "Very well. If we are to commit to this mad plan of yours, let us do it properly. Shipsinger, signal the fleet. All vessels to combat configuration. Prepare for quantum fold insertion directly into the swarm formation." The space around the combined fleet began to shimmer as dragon ships charged their fold drives. Sarah had seen the technology demonstrated before, but never on this scale. The dragons weren't just planning to travel faster than light. They were planning to fold space itself, creating a tunnel through dimensions that would deposit them in the middle of the enemy formation. It was the kind of tactic that required split-second timing and absolute trust between species that had never fought together before. The Void Swarm appeared on the edge of sensor range like a living nightmare. Their bioships moved in patterns that suggested a single vast intelligence, flowing through space like schools of mechanical fish. At their center, barely visible among the smaller vessels, was their command nexus, a structure the size of a moon, covered in organic armor that pulsed with malevolent life. "Fold insertion in 30 seconds, Cathis announced. "All human vessels report ready. Dragon ships achieving harmony resonance." Sarah felt the Eternal Flames systems synchronizing with every other dragon ship in the fleet, their crews singing in harmonic frequencies that turned the entire formation into a single vast instrument. It was beautiful and terrifying, the sound of beings who had transcended individual existence to become something greater. But the human ships sang too, in their own way. Voices raised in battle songs that had carried their species through wars on 100 worlds. Engines humming with the determined rhythm of machinery pushed beyond safe limits, hearts beating in synchronization with the prospect of either victory or death. "Fold insertion initiated," Cathis reported. The universe folded. Sarah felt the sensation of being turned inside out, of existing in negative space where up was down and time flowed backward. For an instant that lasted forever. She existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, seeing the battle from angles that shouldn't exist. Then reality reasserted itself, and they were in the heart of the swarm. Chaos erupted around them. Bioships the size of cities opened fire with weapons that converted matter directly into energy, while dragon vessels responded with plasma beams that could cut through stellar cores. The space between the combatants filled with streams of destruction, turning the void into a kaleidoscope of violence. But the humans weren't trying to fight their way through the swarm. They were doing something that no sane species would attempt. They were using the chaos as cover, slipping between the massive bioships like fighters dodging between capital ships, racing toward the command nexus at the formation's heart. "By the ancient laws," HFY breathed, watching human ships thread needle-thin gaps between swarm dreadnoughts. "They're actually doing it." Sarah tracked their progress on the tactical display, her enhanced senses processing information faster than any baseline human could manage. The plan was working, but barely. For every human ship that made it through the swarm defenses, another was destroyed by concentrated fire or simply torn apart by gravitational forces. The Defiance led the charge, Admiral Harrison's ship somehow finding paths through defensive networks that should have been impenetrable. Sarah realized he wasn't following any tactical algorithm or strategic doctrine. He was flying on instinct, the same impossible intuition that had let human pilots survive battles they should have lost. "Sarah," Harrison's voice crackled over the communication system, heavy with static from swarm jamming. "We're at the Nexus perimeter, beginning final approach. If this doesn't work—" "It will work," Sarah replied, her voice carrying across both audio and mental channels. "It has to work, because that's what humans do. We make impossible things possible through sheer bloody-minded determination." Through the bond, HFY felt her absolute certainty, her unshakable faith in her people's ability to succeed despite impossible odds. It was a certainty born not of logic or calculation, but of love. Love for the species that had produced her daughter, for the man who had been her husband, for the admiral who had chosen to trust her despite his doubts. It was the most human thing imaginable and the most powerful force in the universe. The Defiance and her escort ships reached the command nexus just as the swarm realized what was happening. Bioships began converging from all directions, but it was too late. Human vessels, too small and fast for the massive weapons to track effectively, slipped through the Nexus's defenses and began their final assault. "Targeting the neural core," Harrison reported. "Beginning attack run." Sarah watched through her enhanced senses as human ships dove toward the Nexus like ancient fighter planes attacking a battle station, weaving between defensive fire that could have destroyed them with a single hit. It was madness, courage, and tactical brilliance all combined into something that transcended mere military strategy. It was art. The neural core exploded in a cascade of light that could be seen across star systems. For a moment, the entire swarm fleet hung motionless in space as the signal that had controlled them for millennia simply stopped existing. Then, one by one, 47,000 bioships went dark. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the combined fleet, crews stared at their displays in disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, against all reason, they had actually won. "Victory," shipsinger Cathus announced, her harmonics carrying joy that painted golden images in the minds of all who heard her. "The swarm is defeated. The bioships are dead in space." Cheers erupted from every human vessel, voices raised in triumph and disbelief. They had faced extinction and chosen to fight instead, had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. But it was Admiral Harrison's voice that cut through the celebration, calm and professional despite the magnitude of what they had accomplished. "This is Admiral Harrison to all ships. Excellent work, people. Now let's go home." Sarah felt Virkashai's wonder through their bond, his amazement at what he had witnessed. In a single battle, humans had achieved something that dragons, with all their power and technology, had thought impossible. They had proven that courage and determination could triumph over any odds, that love could overcome any obstacle. "Your species never ceases to amaze me," he said, his mental voice warm with affection and respect. "Our species," Sarah corrected gently. "I'm human, you're dragon, but together we're something new. Something that can build bridges between any two forms of life that choose to reach for each other." Around them, human and dragon ships began the long journey home, carrying news of a victory that would reshape the galaxy. The Void Swarm was defeated, but more than that, two species had proven that cooperation could achieve what neither could accomplish alone. And in the quiet of her transformed mind, Sarah heard an echo of her daughter's voice, proud and joyful and eternally young. "See, Mom? I told you humans could do anything." The stars had never looked brighter.